your attention from the constant noise, the constant movement and fluctuations of the objects of sensation in the world outside. It's not about making them stop or pushing them away. It's just about unhooking your attention from them and just allowing the attention to pull inward. And allow that awareness to anchor in your breath. Just see how sharp the awareness can be with every aspect of the breath. As it begins to flow into you, as it flows through the body, as the cells become oxygenated, just allow that awareness to become so sharp that you're aware of every cell being touched by that incoming breath. If the mind wanders, just gently bring it back. It's so habituated to being hooked into the constant stimuli in the world around us. So it just takes some practice to bring that awareness to the inner world. Just keep drawing it back to the breath and the subtler and subtler aspects of the breath. Now for the next few moments, be absolutely sure not to move the body. Don't itch, don't fidget, don't change how you're sitting. Just however you are, make sure for the next few moments that you just don't move the physical body. And as you hold the physical body still, notice as you breathe that you're breathing from the outside to the inside on the inhalation, carrying in that sacred prana from outside to inside. And that on the exhalation, you're letting go from inside to outside. Just notice that for a few breaths. That movement, that unbroken flow, bringing in from the outside and exhaling from inside back to outside. But as you hold the physical body absolutely still, don't move. Notice as you do that slowly that boundary between inner and outer dissolves. And there is no longer a distinction between the outer and the inner. Allow yourself to notice that as the body stays absolutely still. And you're breathing, but now there's no experience of a distinction between the outer and the inner. And suddenly there is nothing but just breathing. No borders, no boundaries. Just breathing is happening. And you are just aware of the presence of breathing. It's a very subtle experience, and it requires that the physical body be absolutely still, and that you allow yourself to drop into that full, pure awareness of just the breath. Not your breath, because there is no place you end and the world begins. There's just breath and breathing. And you are anchored just in the awareness of that which is. Slowly and gently, bring the palms of your hands together at chest level and rub them gently against each other. Press the palms of your hands into your closed eyes. Slowly lower the hands and open the eyes. Welcome to Satsang. Beautiful to be together. Wonderful. So starting as always with a question that's come in advance from our online internet-based family joining from all over the world. Then we'll open it up to any questions that any of you might have. Just has God blessed everyone with the capacity to seek and find Him? Has God blessed everyone with the capacity to seek and find Him? And this has been asked by Sangeeta on Facebook. So it's said that the reason that the human birth is such a great thing to have, and why it's seen as the pinnacle, the highest point of evolution, is because only human beings are able to attain self-realization, God-realization. So, yeah, all humans absolutely have the ability not only to seek, but to find. Because remember, we're finding within ourselves. Does everyone have the ability to land on Mars or the moon? Well, if you were starting from birth, yes. But if we took everybody from where we are now, then no. I mean, we'd all have to go back to, undergraduate physics and begin all over again and take all those classes that we didn't take and follow all of the paths that we didn't follow and be a whole lot better at math than we were, and all of those sort of forks in the paths of our lives that happened, we'd have to rewind and redo them all over again. If the Indian Space Research Organization or NASA or anybody was looking for candidates to land on the moon or Mars, I know I would be disqualified. I imagine most of you probably would be. That most of us just don't have the scientific background. Probably we don't have the physical training that's required. But that's outer space. We're talking about inner space. And the idea of finding God, well, when we go deep enough inside, that's where we find God. I mean, we can also find God in a beautiful deity of Bhagwan Krishna, Bhagwan Ram, Shankar Bhagwan, the mother goddess. We can find God in a tree. We can find God anywhere. But we can also find God deep within ourselves. And so every single being, every human being, has that capacity. Absolutely. However, we have to look inward. And a lot of us, based on our karmic journeys, our karmic packages, sort of where we are karmically, well, we may not be in that place in this lifetime. This may be a lifetime in which, for whatever reason, we are focused on making a lot of money and just, making a name for ourselves and buying the things we want to buy and going to the restaurants we want to eat at and going to the clubs or the resorts or the vacation spots that we see advertisements for and we think, oh, I want to go. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It doesn't make those people bad. It just means that in the ultimate journey of life, they get to have an extra few steps to actually get to where we're told we are ultimately going, which is that realization. So don't feel badly if you find yourself just drawn over and over and over again. Like you just can't meditate, you have no interest, you just want to shop, or you just want to do something else. Don't feel badly. We keep coming back over and over and over again, sort of refining our spiritual selves. Now that being said, there's beautiful stories of transformations. Beautiful stories of, people who began life in one way and ended up in a totally different way. I'm an example of that, but we've got even more profound examples of that. You have the example of so many Kalidas. So many examples of incredible beings who began life as thieves, as dacoits, as murderers, as people in gangs, as drug dealers, as all kinds of what you would consider like really sort of low on a spiritual totem pole of life. And yet through a whole variety of different types of spiritual interventions, whether it's they get a copy of a Bible or a Bhagavad Gita sitting in jail, whether on death row, whether they end up with a mentor, a guide, a guru, someone who touches them in a certain way, or whether they just have a profound realization one day. It happens in so many different ways, but in all different cultures and religions and countries, we have these beautiful stories of people. Some are, thousands of years old. Some are in the last couple decades. Of people whose lives have been just absolutely transformed. They begin in one way, and they end up in a completely different way. So, even those who feel like, I just can't meditate, I want to shop, or I just can't meditate because I only want to think about sex, or I can't meditate because all I want to do is plan my next murder. You still have hope. There still is hope for you. Don't despair. Recognize that you're on a different part of the spiritual journey, but that there have been so many people like you in the past who have actually found the power of incredible transformation in their lives. So never give up. And remember that in so many cases, meditation is, as I guide in these, simple dip your toe in the water experiences of meditation at the beginning of Satsang, so much of it is really about anchoring in awareness. And if what the awareness is awareness that I am sitting here trying to meditate, but all I'm thinking about is chocolate cake, so be it. So that's what you're aware of. You're aware of desire. You're aware of fear. You're aware of hatred. It means we're aware of this veil of Maya, and just you notice it. Wow, that's so interesting. Look Look at how that veil of Maya is just spread across my entire mind and awareness. Look at that. Isn't that interesting? I wonder when, by grace, that veil is going to lift. You just notice it. So yes, absolutely, every one of us has the capacity to seek and to find God. And remember that the universe is also very, very patient. So there's one way to think about it, which is like, use this life, use every minute, use every moment, and we all should. I mean, why waste time? And simultaneously, you don't want to turn getting enlightened or having God realization into yet another item on your daily to-do list that gets left undone. So that at the end of the day, you feel like, again, a failure, that I didn't do it. Don't let your spiritual practice become yet another reason to berate yourself or feel badly about yourself or judge yourself. Okay, if not this life, then next life. If not next life, the life after that. It's going to happen. It's going to happen eventually. We aim for this life. We commit ourselves to being as aware, as anchored, as grounded, as present, as full of surrender in every moment as we can. And part of that surrender is surrendering to all of the aspects of our karmic journey. Ah, there's desire again. Okay. Ah, there's lust again. Okay. All right. You notice it. All right, there it is. I grew up in Los Angeles, and in Los Angeles we have so many earthquakes. And I remember one time we had some friends visiting from back east at my house, and my parents, and there was an earthquake. And it wasn't even a major one. I mean, it was a shake, but for those of us from LA, it wasn't such a big deal. And this person from back east completely freaked out, started screaming, sweating, eventually burst into tears, like, oh my God, an earthquake. And we all looked at each other and said, yeah, happens all the time. Sit back to dinner. Because we were used to it. Because we were used to daily life being interrupted every once in a while by an earthquake. And you notice it. It doesn't shake you. It doesn't ruin the day. In the same way, when you notice these quakes, these shakes, these disruptions, in the peace, the calm, the stillness that you've been cultivating, don't freak out. Just notice it. It's okay. It'll stop. And then you'll come back. Just notice it. Ah, earthquake. Ah, greed. Ah, lust. Ah, ego. Ah, pattern from the past. Okay. Then you go back. And of course you do the same thing that you do in an earthquake, which is you make sure that when it comes, that it doesn't sweep you away with it. So just like in an earthquake, even though it didn't freak us out, we all knew you stand in a door frame or you duck and cover. Just because you're used to it doesn't mean that you want to get swept up in it, injured by it. And in the same way, when these quakes that feel distinctly unspiritual and like they're taking us farther from God realization, when they arise, you anchor. Return to the breath, return to your mantra. If you need to shift the meditation for a moment from closed eyes to open eyes, looking at a divine image, you do whatever you need to be so that when the quaking comes, you're safe, you're grounded, you're anchored, you're stable. And then it passes and you're able to go back to that state that you've been in. So don't worry about it. It's part of the package deal of human life on this beautiful road that we're all walking together back to self-realization, God-realization, whatever we call it. It's the same thing. But every one of us, regardless of how many earthquakes happen in your mind every moment, every one of us has the capacity for it. No one is disqualified. No one isn't good enough. No one isn't worthy. Doesn't matter what you've done, doesn't matter what's happened to you. Everyone has that capacity. We just have to harness it. Great. Other questions? Anyone here? Yeah. He's just, yeah.
साध्वी जी कोटि कोटि नमन. मैं हिंदी में क्वेश्चन पूछूंगा.
Sure.
Yeah. So जैसे जैसे हम उम्र दराज होते लगते हैं, तो उसके साथ साथ हमारी लाइफ में कुछ इमोशनल एक्सपीरियंसेस, कुछ इमोशनल मोमेंट्स ऐसे होते हैं जिनको कई बार भूल पाना मुश्किल होता है, और कई बार वो आपके फ्यूचर में कमिंग टाइम में वो लौट के वापस आते हैं. आपको वो थोड़ा सा कई बार हॉरर भी देते हैं. कैसे उनको ओवरकम किया जाए? मतलब आई मीन इट इज़ इम्पॉसिबल टू डिलीट समथिंग जो हमारी लाइफ में कभी एक्सपीरियंस हमने करी है.
Wouldn't it be great if the mind had a delete button? Yeah, there's a few computer keys and shortcuts that it would be just so wonderful to bring into life. Delete is certainly one of them. But life is not about deleting things. Life is about dealing with them. And there's nothing that we can't deal with. You don't have to delete them. You just have to deal with them. Yes, we've all made mistakes. Yes, we've all done things that if we had a rewind button, we would rewind and do it differently. We've all done things that we feel guilt about, maybe even shame about. This is part of human nature. We've all had experiences in life that were not necessarily our fault, that happened to us, done by others, done by the universe. That again, if we had a rewind button, we would rewind and undo that. But we can't. Life has no delete button, no rewind button, no do-over button. And so we have to just deal with them. And recognize that they are not you. I remember many years ago, Puja Swamiji and I went to visit a jail near San Francisco. A devotee was working in the jail and invited us to go. And so it was an optional time for the prisoners. Obviously it wasn't mandatory. And they had a lot of different religious people who went, typically pastors and ministers and priests. And we were told later that usually, 3, 4, 6 people would show up to see the minister or the priest. And every single person came to this. Everyone. There was not any cell that wasn't open. Like the hall was packed. And Puja Swamiji said something really, really, really powerful to them. I mean, he said so much that was powerful, but one line sticks out specifically. He said, "You are not your crimes." He said, "You're here because of a crime that happened through you. But you are not the crime. The crime is this much. you are this much. And he said, yeah, you're stuck here until the karma of that crime finishes itself. But stop thinking of yourself as that crime and realize that you are this much. And that's the same lesson for all of us, whether it's something that we've done, maybe not something that actually landed us in jail, but nonetheless something that we wish we hadn't done, or whether it's something that happened to us purposely by another being, or just by the universe. Our house burned down, our loved one died, whatever it may be, these things happen in life. To recognize we are not. We're not that action that we did. We are not that tragedy that befell us. We don't want to delete it because it happened. It's part of the package of our karmic experience on planet Earth. If it happened through us or to us, clearly there is a lesson in it for us. But we need to figure out how to grow from it, with it, around it. You know, I was studying neurology. That was my academic background. And one of the things that I love about neurology is how the brain works when it gets injured. And so, for example, if the part of the brain that's dedicated to sight gets injured, gets damaged, so that the person can no longer see, the person goes blind, something very interesting happens, which is that the parts of the brain dedicated to hearing or smell, they grow. They start taking over the area that used to be dedicated to sight. So we actually have this capacity to grow into our own injuries, to grow into our own losses, to grow into those difficulties. It's not that suddenly that part of the brain is damaged and it's just dead and over. The brain is a constantly living, changing sort of organism of its own. And we're constantly changing and adapting and growing based on what is happening in the brain. And of course, the younger you are, the more the brain is able to do this. But nonetheless, it stays constant throughout our lives. And so the same thing is true, not just in the actual neurons of our neural capacity, but in terms of our whole karmic life. When there are these injuries, these assaults, this damage, whether, because I've done something that I really regret and it's killing me with guilt, or because this terrible thing has happened to me. The question is, how can the rest of me grow and change into this damaged part, such that who I am is fuller and deeper than I was before? So think about it in that way, is how do you move forward? Don't think about deleting it, but think about moving forward. Choices from today, decisions from today, awarenesses from today. And how do we live every minute and every moment anchored, grounded, conscious, aware, so that we don't make decisions in the heat of emotion that we later regret? And also so that life doesn't shake us so much. One of my favorite stories of this is a story about Maharishi Mahesh Yogi Ji, who used to live just a couple of ashrams down from us at what's now sadly called the Beatles ashram. I mean, it's not sad, it's great that the Beatles were here, and it's wonderful that people are interested in seeing the ashram. It's sad because ultimately it was Maharishi Ji's ashram, and there was so much more to him than simply having been the guru of the Beatles. But in any case, Pujya Swamiji tells a beautiful story about him because they knew each other well. And Pujya Swamiji was there one day when Maharishi Ji was given the news that his secretary had just stolen some huge sum of money from the ashram bank accounts and had run off. And the person comes in, his assistant comes in, panicked to give the news, like, oh my God, you're this trusted person, just this huge sum of money, stole it, has run off. And Maharishi Ji sat there very calm, very quiet. And eventually he said, she must not have been meditating. Right? I mean, I love that. Just like his heart was sort of broken in compassion for the fact that someone could fall so low as to steal money. Not, oh my God, the you-know-what, how dare they betray me. But just, must have not been meditating. So that's what we're looking for, is that ability, that equanimity that Bhagavan Krishna speaks about in the Gita. Yeah, things happen in life. Life happens. We happen to our own life. But how can you maintain that state of equanimity? Not indifference, not apathy, not callousness, not disconnection. Full presence, full connection, full spectrum of possibility of feeling and thought and emotion. But not tossed around like the waves of the ocean on the whim of someone else or something else. Yeah, other questions? एक काम करो भैया, यहाँ लेके आ, बच्चों के पास. We have a kids first policy.
What should be the main purpose of Brahmacharya Āśrama?
Great question. So in our Indian tradition, we have what are known as the 4 ashrams of life. Means the 4 phases of life. And typically, the first phase is Brahmacharya. And those are what you could consider our student years. Now, Brahmacharya is sometimes defined as celibacy, but that's not actually what the word means. It is actually a student, a seeker becoming a master of the supreme reality. So it is a time of study. The reason that sexual abstinence and celibacy is said to be an important part, first of all, because it's the first phase of life. Typically, you're very young, so hold off on those things. But even for people who take Brahmacharya later on in life, the reason that those aspects are said also, be celibate, abstain from sex, is because it can distract us from that ultimate purpose of being that seeker student, ultimately master of the supreme reality. But that's actually what the word means. So the Brahmacharya Āśrama of life your ultimate goal is study. Study, study, study. But not study just in school so that you get good grades, so you get into a good college and university and get a good job and can make a lot of money. Not like that. Study in school, absolutely. But study life, study yourself. Because what I can tell you as someone who had really the very best that academic education can give, it's great on the level of knowing fun facts and information and figures and getting your brain exercised in a certain way. But it has zero connection, zero, to happiness, fulfillment, peace, meaning in life. Zero connection. So you want to study also yourself. Who am I? Am I just this body? Am I just my grades in school? Am I just my athletic ability, or am I just my musical ability, or whatever extracurricular things you do? Are you just the way you look? Are you your height and your weight? Or is there something more? What is that more? Who am I? What is that thing that is the same in me? Even though my body keeps changing, I'm growing, my body keeps changing, but what is it that's the same? How old are you? 11. So if you can remember back to when you were maybe 4 or 5 or 6, so at that time, you were saying I and mine, right? My toys, my cookies, my room. And today also, you say mine and me and I. But that I has changed, right? Well, that's the big question. The body has changed. What you do has changed. But has I really changed? Have you had any gap where suddenly I gets a complete makeover? No, right? Every single day you say I, you say me, you say mine. Stays constant, consistent. Doesn't matter how much your body keeps changing, what clothes you're wearing, what you're doing. I is constant. So figure out, who is that I? I can promise you the I is not your grades. It's very easy to get lost in our grades, in our scores, in our academic achievement, in our ranking. Don't let that happen to you. Study hard. Do the very best you can. Because your greatest gift is your sincerity. Sincerity means doing things with the fullness of your heart. Don't do things just kind of halfway. If you're doing it halfway, better don't do it. Whatever you do, do it fully. You're playing, play fully. Don't think about your homework. Play fully, enjoy it, love it. Forget everything else. You're doing your homework, do it fully. Don't be thinking about the cricket match. Don't be thinking about getting outside to play. Don't be thinking about anything else. Just study fully. Whatever you're doing, do it fully. Do it sincerely. Do it the best you can. But I promise you, there will be some things that you're very good at, and there will be some things you're not very good at. Maybe you already have learned that there's some things that you can do really well. And maybe some things other people can do better than you can do. And that's great. That's what life is about. If you look at everything in nature, there's so much variety, so many types of fruits, so many types of flowers. Everyone is different. We don't want one fruit that's part banana, part apple, part this, part that. I remember one time I was in Los Angeles with Puja Swamiji many years ago. It was right when GMOs had just started. And my mom handed Puja Swamiji an apple. And she said, taste it, taste it. She said, it's a surprise, taste it. And he loves fruit, so he said, okay. So he takes a bite of the apple, and he says, this apple tastes very different. My mother said, it's a grapple. And he said, it's a what? And she said, it's a grapple. It's part grape and part apple. He said, what? She said, yeah, now with this genetic thing they've made, it's half grape, half apple. They've joined them together in some way. Now, grapes are wonderful, and apples are wonderful, but they don't belong in the same fruit. Like every one of you went, ugh, when I mentioned it, because, yeah, it was not very good. And you'll notice today nobody's selling grapples. It was an utter failure in the genetically modified department. Everything is different. And variety is perfect. Variety is exactly what God wants. It's exactly what we should be. So if you are an apple, don't feel like you also should have to be a grape. And if you're a grape, don't feel like you also need to be an apple. What you're good at, that's wonderful. And things that you're not, that's okay. Try your best. Be sincere. But don't feel badly about it. Just keep remembering who you are. And you're 11 years old today. When you become 21 and 31 and 61 and 81, that I will stay the same. That's going to be with you your whole life. Get to know it. When you close your eyes, ask yourself, who is that I? Make that I your best friend. Because wherever you go, I promise that I will never tell your secrets. Will never betray you. Will never one day decide they don't want to be your friend. Make that I inside your best friend. So study in school, yes, but study yourself. And your deeper and deeper and deeper self, as much as you can. And really ask yourself all the time, what has God put me here for? How can I serve? You've got such beautiful hands and legs and a beautiful mind, a beautiful heart, a beautiful body. Now, at 11, there's only some things you can do. When you become 15, you'll be able to do more. When you become 20, you'll be able to do more. And as you get more and more knowledge and more skills, ask yourself, how can I use this to help others? And it may be big things, it may be little things, it doesn't matter. Every one of them is important. Okay? So this Brahmacharya phase is very beautiful, very important. And it's the phase in which you go from being a student and seeker to being a master of that whole divine truth. Wonderful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening, everyone. A beautiful morning and day to our family joining us online. And I look so forward to seeing you all tomorrow. And if I didn't have a chance to take your questions today, we will take them in the beginning tomorrow. I'll take them first tomorrow.